Hello and welcome to the One Take Show, a podcast where we celebrate incredible conversation with some fantastic people. In this episode of Amazing Conversation, I bring to you a conversation with Mr. Kushal Mehra. Mr. Mehra is the host of India's leading podcast on sociological conversations, on politics, on philosophy, on religion, the Carvaka Podcast. The reason why I have requested Mr. Kushal Mehra to talk to me on the One Take Show is to really understand how we as students can understand philosophy and grow with the process. In this conversation, we will talk about philosophy and its impact on the life of a student, how we can actually learn from philosophical concepts, and how does it impact the life of a student, especially law students. We will also talk about cancel culture, the importance of free speech, and much more. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions or feedbacks, make sure you reach out to me. I would absolutely love that. Also, do check out the Carvaka Podcast. I have linked the channel down in the description. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, sir. Welcome to the One Take Show. This is a huge pleasure for me personally because I am a huge fan of Carvaka Podcast. It is the age where the entire generational transformation is being witnessed by this country, by industries. And we see that the importance of discourse, the importance of communication has really arisen out of nowhere. We see that there is transformations happening everywhere. And at this platform, for someone who's aspiring to promote that principle, also to learn more about deep-seated identities, the deep-seated ideologies, your podcast provides us the kind of guidance we need. Thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule on a Sunday to sit down with me for this amazing conversation.
Oh, namaste, Kaustubh. Thanks for having me over. It's always a pleasure to talk to people and share ideas and have freewheeling conversations. I think the world has a shortage of that, so I'm very happy to do this.
Absolutely. I think the Carvaka Podcast needs no introduction whatsoever, but to give a little hint to my listeners, it's one of the biggest podcasts in India talking about social issues, talking about economic issues, talking about various socio-political issues, and with guests from various backgrounds which have some amazing insights to give to every listener. So to have a little bit of an understanding as to what exactly is the principle with the Carvaka Podcast, we would like to first delve into your journey particularly and what inspired you to arrive at the Carvaka Podcast in a sense.
Actually, it's very interesting that I came across the genre of podcasting, I think 6 years ago. So I'm a mixed martial arts fan. So I like watching UFC primarily. I mean, nowadays we get Bellator in India too, but but 6 years ago, it's basically UFC. I grew up watching boxing, and then boxing suddenly disappeared, and then out of the blue, most kids know Brock Lesnar, right, from WWE. So Brock Lesnar left WWE and he went into UFC, which is real fighting. So that's when I realized, because Brock Lesnar had come, they started showing UFC in India, and I was like, okay, finally they're showing UFC in India, so let's start watching that. And then I used to listen to some shows of UFC related or mixed martial arts shows in general that would have long form discussions, and I used to be like, hang on, this is nice, they're not shouting over each other and it sounds very good, and this is how things should be. And then I used to consume the content on YouTube, and on YouTube then one thing led to another. You know how the YouTube algorithm works, right? They understand what your likes are, and then they keep on giving you recommendations, and then they recommended me to another show and to another show, and then from there I think four and a half, I don't exactly remember, somewhere down the line I came across the Dave Rubin show. Dave Rubin at that time was with he was with Larry King, Aura TV. And then from the Dave Rubin recommendations, then I came across Joe Rogan, and then it's the funny thing is I used to read all of Sam Harris's books, but I never knew Sam Harris had a podcast, which is such a huge podcast. I just did not know. And then I found out Sam Harris's podcast, and then I just got hooked onto the genre as a consumer 6 years ago. I like the idea of people talking to each other about different subjects without interrupting each other, without attributing any malice to each other. So I mean, I've stopped consuming news now for more than 6+ years now. I don't watch anything on TV, mainstream media. I don't know what's happening. Like if somebody came and say, अरे तुमने देखा आज अर्नब ने ये बोला या बरखा दत्त ने ये बोला, I know Barkha Dutt is no longer on mainstream media. She herself is on the internet now. But the point is, like, I don't know because I don't watch it. And then I think somewhere around 4 years ago, I remember having a conversation with a couple of friends of mine, and one of them was with me on a Starbucks, and she told me, she's like, तेरे को इतना passion है इसके बारे में, तू 2 साल से सुनते जा रहा है इसको, and why don't you do something yourself? And I was like, yeah, actually in India hardly anybody does it anyways, so might as well give it a shot. And then I started. I remember the first year my podcasts were, I think the first few podcasts are pathetic. I mean, I have to say that I did not know anything. It's like, how Indians are. We don't get trained, right? We get trained on the job. Absolutely. So even my podcast was training myself on the job. So I was training myself on how to ask questions, how to frame. I still don't understand how to make thumbnails. I still don't understand all that. And yeah, so for me, podcasting was an escape from the noise of mainstream media, and till a large extent the tribalism that we see on social media, where if you agree with one point, then you're supposed to agree with every single point of that.
True.
I can't do that, and I'm a non-conformist by nature. And as the name of the podcast suggests, I'm a charvak. I'm a Nastic, and for me, being non-conformist is very normal. I mean, I've been a Nastic for 20 years of my life now. So I've been surrounded by Aztec people, and I've been an Aztec, and I always felt comfortable, and they've been comfortable too. So I guess that, long story short, that's how I decided to do a podcast, and now it's been more than 3.5 years.
Yeah. There's one very specific factor about your podcast that I notice, and something that I would like to point out as a genuine appreciation, is that we see a lot of podcasts which are inspirational in nature, sort of podcasts which are motivational in nature, or they're podcasts which cater to certain Indian folklore or Indian cultural heritage. Your podcast, in a sense, talks about values. It talks about Vedic culture. It talks about discussions which can talk about from new education policy, as one of your recent podcasts were talking about, to some of the most important topics such as neutrality and your take on neutrality as a monologue. My question here is that when you cover a sphere so wide and you have engagement so broad, how exactly do you see this engagement adding to you professionally, personally, or as a personality in general?
Well, look, you have to understand that when you decide to do something in life, this is how I do it. So this is not everybody should not follow it. I'm not saying everybody, and nor am I saying don't try this at home, nor am I saying try this at home. This is what I do. I'm a very stubborn person by nature. I only do things that I like to do. I'm also curious by nature. I'm a seeker. I like to talk about different issues. Like, I'll tell you, when I started the podcast, somebody would tell me, Kushal, you have to pick one thing. Us pe baat karo.
The niche.
I was like, but I was like, why? I was like, मेरे को buffet अच्छा लगता है, मेरे को जो बात करनी है मैं करूँगा. I mean, if I like to talk about multiple subjects, I'm going to talk about like I've done podcasts on cricket. I have done podcasts on deep philosophical concepts. I have done podcasts on contentious subjects. I have done podcasts where, like, I'm very vehemently anti-caste. Like, I am anti-Jati Varna to the core. And I have done podcast after podcast on against Jati. And I'm a Nastic. So I criticize religion. So I talk about that too. Now, there is no one particular bracket that I like to talk about. My thing is, there are 3 reasons that I do a podcast with. A, if I find someone to be interesting, it doesn't have to be that I have to agree with that person. In fact, in my case, I would say 70% of the views that are aired on my podcast, I don't agree with them in general, because I'm such a non-conformist. But my podcast is not about me. The monologue is about me.
Yes.
It is about my guest views. So I want to showcase different kinds of people and different kinds of views on the podcast. And also I wanted to, I know it sounds very lofty, but I mean, I genuinely started it for this reason. I wanted to talk to people I find interesting. Also, I wanted to bring on people on the internet who the mainstream media refuses to show, or who has painted them as monsters. When they're not monsters, you can say they are wrong according to you, but they're not monsters. I don't believe many of these people are monsters. So that these were, and the third thing was, I genuinely want people to think Like when I did that monologue, neutrality is a sham. I want people to think that can a human being be actually neutral? You can't be neutral. I'm not neutral.
Absolutely.
I never pretend to be neutral. And this trope is being sold to us by mainstream media that, oh, we are neutral. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're as biased as I am. At least I'm honest. That's the only difference. So this is what got me to do this. And then obviously I have changed as a human being also in the last 3 years. And that is clearly seen in the podcast. In the first year, I was very reluctant to talk about some social issues. Like I'll be very open about it. I was like, let me see how this goes. When I gained confidence, then I was like, let me push a little more. Then now in year 3, like I've now started a new series, this is only exclusive. This is not on the audio version. This is just on the YouTube version, which I call Shastrarth, where I am going to talk about issues that I just realized. So what I did was I did a content analysis of lit fests in India. At lit fest, what I call in the non-left, not on the left, the ones who don't agree with the left.
Correct.
So basically, I did a content analysis and I looked at all the material they cover. Literally, I physically went through every video. Did not watch them all, but at least looked at the content. And I wrote it down, and then I realized that these non-left lit fests that are there supposedly to talk about issues of India, they don't talk about caste, they don't talk about misogyny, they don't talk about any women related issues, they don't talk about any problem in our society. So you go on the left, India is a hellhole. You go on the non-left, India is so amazing, there is no problem. So both are wrong. In my view, both are wrong. India is progressing. I am someone who comes from the Steven Pinker point of view, that humanity is going on progressing at a quantitative level. We can actually map it. And I see that in India myself as a kid born in 1981. And today I'm 39 years old. And I can see India has changed so much. Abhi hum jab bade hue the yaar, gutter bhi nahi the hamare area mein. Abhi kam se kam sewage to hai. So there are many things that have improved. And the non-left refuses to talk about many issues in India. It's like caste. They don't want to talk about caste. So, क्यों भाई? अरे ऐसा देश है जिधर सरनेम से जात पता चल जाती है, हालत इतनी खराब है, और आप उसके बारे में बात ही नहीं करना चाहते हो. You don't want to talk about women-related issues, misogyny and all that stuff. So I was like, let me create a series. What I'll do is I'll start talking about it. And when I talk about it, they can't accuse me of being biased. I mean, मैं तो सबकी ठोकता हूँ in the real sense. So now it has reached a point where it has reached acceptance in the non-left circles. They're like, हाँ ठीक है, इसको बात करने दो. ये कम से कम. It's very funny. I just did a monologue on neutrality is a sham, and then the same people who accept me say, हाँ ये neutral है. अरे मैं भी neutral नहीं हूँ. मगर it's actually very funny. But this is the reason I do these things. For me, it's about what you feel you want to learn or what you feel you're passionate about, and that's how I function.
Perfect.
Well, will it work for everyone else? I don't know.
Absolutely. I just need to take a little bit of your opinion on a very small thing that you just, a very small segment of what you just mentioned. I think it's important that I follow up. You mentioned that you specifically promoted the fact that there are certain people who are not really accepted on mainstream, perhaps termed monsters because of their opinions. So would you say that you do not subscribe to the alt-left's ideology of cancel culture, where they somehow do not allow the differential opinion to exist, as against, as you have just mentioned, you don't agree with the alt-right's ideology of not talking about the certain issues that plague the society? Is there a dichotomy that you agree with?
See, the problem is when you look at the extremes on both sides, like wo the horseshoe hota hai na, and they both see extremes of both ends are authoritarian and they don't want any deviation on any side. Most human beings are always lying all over the place. First of all, we need to get rid of this left-right classification in India, because how it has worked in India is that everybody knew what the left wing was. The left wing was looking to call someone the right wing. So they're like, अच्छा ये BJP वालों को right wing बुला देते हैं. And I would recommend all your listeners and viewers to do this. Go to a podcast I did with a guy called Ruchir Sharma. In that we played a game. Right? We played a game. What did we do? Ruchir and I came up with this concept. So that Ruchir will ask me, he will give speeches without mentioning the leader. He will read the policy without mentioning the leader. And I will tell them, what do I think this policy is? Right? And the funniest part is when he read the policies of Modi, I said, ये communist लगता है.
Okay.
So बोलो अभी उसको right wing बोलना है. I mean this, and I always say this to everybody. Each and every person who's going to watch this, do one thing. Next time somebody says BJP is right wing, right? You tell them define right wing. Yeah, BJP believes in social they don't believe in fiscal conservatism. They are as
Correct.
socialist as it gets. BJP believes in state control of most things.
Correct.
BJP is just like the Congress when it comes to free speech. They are anti-free speech. When it comes to the only difference between BJP and Congress, to be very honest, is Congress panders to what I call the non-Hindu conservatives in India. Non-Hindu in the legal sense, not in the religious sense. Indian Constitution says the ones who are not Christian, Muslim, and Parsi are Hindus in India. Yeah, that's the legal definition. So when I use the word Hindu, I mean the legal definition. So Congress panders to the non-Hindu conservative. तो बीजेपी ने बोला चलो एक काम करते हैं हम ये वाले कंजर्वेटिव को पैंडर करते हैं. Both are actually pandering to conservatism. It is just pandering to a different conservative. Both parties are pandering to social conservatives. Both parties are socialist. The only difference is that BJP is more nativist than Congress.
Okay.
That's not right-wing politics. If you are a right-wing person in the classical Western sense, you would be for laissez-faire economics. You would be for lesser state control. Has the BJP stopped control of Hindu temples in India? Is BJP going to stop it? No, they're not. And look at this unique country. Only Hindu temples are controlled by the government. Mosques and churches, they're not controlled by the government. So how is BJP right-wing? Like, I am very, very particular about terms and terminologies. You want to call BJP socialist, authoritarian, left-wing party? I have no issues. I have no issues with that. You can call them nativists also. Don't insult them by don't insult right wing by calling BJP right wing. That's my only point. Now to answer your question about this monster thing, well, that's what the left has made, right? They needed a boogeyman. They needed someone ki ye janwar hai. But then my question to you is, okay, let's talk on social conservatism. In 2012, when the Supreme Court had written a letter to the UPA asking, should we decriminalize 377? These are factual records, right? Yeah. The Congress government wrote to the Supreme Court categorically stating, don't decriminalize it. Congress is the liberal party of India. I am just stating facts. They are the liberals of India. Liberals of India say, nahi criminalize homosexuality. Same courts again write to the so-called fascist right-wing party, anti-gay people. They say, आपको जो करना है करो, हमको कोई इशू नहीं. So basically, this is the desi way of saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge. भाई देख तू निकाल दे, मुझे भी निकालना है, मगर मैं तेरे थ्रू निकालूंगा. तुझे जूते नहीं मारते, मेरे को जूते मारते. Okay. So this is the fascist party doing this. Congress is the liberal party. Then you have the case of triple talaq. Now, in the case of triple talaq, any decent living human being would say it is an abomination. But the Congress Mahila Morcha chief was on the record giving a speech saying, जब हम वापस आएंगे, हम triple talaq वापस लाएंगे. What kind of liberalism is this? I mean, I as a real liberal find so lost in this country. I mean, neither the BJP is liberal nor the Congress is liberal. It is like we are stuck between Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And I'm very open. I choose Tweedledum. I don't hide it. I vote for BJP. But theek hai na? I am open about voting for a dumb party. But I don't think the other party is not dumb. Both are dumb. I'm just choosing one Dumbo over the other Dumbo. But at least let's not lie to ourselves. Words have no meaning in India. Like the word secular. I mean, India is the only country where individuals say, I am a secular person. Since when did individuals become secular? Absolutely. How can a human being become secular? The state is secular. I am for a secular state. But then again, is India a secular state? No. India is not a secular state. Only the preamble says it. Its behavior and the laws are not on the basis of secularism. And when I say secularism, I mean the American version or the French version. It's just words have no meaning in India, and then on social media we just keep talking like buffoons. I'm sorry for my language, and then you're supposed to go about it. I refuse to go by it. For me, words matter, values matter. I'm a staunch believer in secularism. I want secularism in India, but this is not secularism. This is just some weird garbage state control that we have. As a person who believes in less state and a small state, I don't know what we have in India.
I think that somehow explains the conflict that we face every day. Although I won't get much into the modalities of the same, perhaps because of the lack of knowledge and experience that I have. But the kind of conflict that we observe, the lack of meeting ground, is perhaps because, as you mentioned, words have sort of lost meaning. So there is no possible discourse on tangible logical grounds. But not much about this. Bringing back this conversation to something that my listeners would eagerly love to listen to is your take on the current condition of youngsters in India, especially the ones who are in college or the ones who are entering the industry. My audience specifically are law students or legal aspirants who are about to enter the industry with pandemic changing the entire industry, turning the entire world up and down. So there is a huge issue of identity crisis, of existential crisis. We look at our LinkedIn is on steroids, everything is going belly up. So what is your take on this struggle that is going on right now?
First of all, if you're a young kid growing up, what saddens me the most is the lack of reading, and that should change. If you want to be something and you want to grow up to be something relevant in life, you have look. The world is gonna get tougher and tougher. Look, honestly, हम तो lucky थे. हम लोग 80s में पैदा हुए. फिर भी there was little competition. Now, I mean, especially kids growing up these days, I feel so bad for them. I mean, क्या हाल है 98% मार्क्स में भी बच्चे रो रहे हैं. I mean, what the hell have we done to our kids? I just don't understand. 98% मार्क्स आए, मैं तो 98% में बेहोश हो जाता था अगर मुझे आते थे तो.
Okay.
So I actually sympathize with kids. B, I am deeply worried because I read a few studies that the attention span of kids is reducing at the rate of knots. There was a study done, I forgot which university had done the study, where they literally wrote the title of an article. The first paragraph was in sensible English. And then literally below that, I mean, to use Jet Bhasha, it was abba dabba jabba, literal way, man. And people read the article, shared the article. I think more than 70% of the people actually shared the article as if it made sense. That shows that people don't even read beyond the first two paragraphs. That's very dangerous if that's happening. Absolutely. And that's happening a lot with kids these days, that they just look at an article headline. And I blame the media portals too who are doing this, by the way. I mean, if you notice, I have a policy on the Carvaka Podcast, no clickbaity headline. You can never find me having a clickbaity headline. I don't want that. If you don't if you don't find my YouTube channel, it's okay. But I will not fall for that clickbait. 3, I say this to every young kid, get some basic grounding in philosophy. Okay. Especially if you're a law student. If you don't understand philosophy, so let's take a very active case, right? How many kids who are studying law understand the harm principle? What is the harm principle of John Stuart Mill? Like, now, I always say this. I always give the classic example that is used to everyone in philosophy, that, okay, why is drinking and driving bad? And why is drinking not bad? Because when you drink and drive, the probabilities of causing harm to others is there. But when you drink individually, you're causing harm to yourself. That's fine. तुम अपने आप को मारना चाहते हो, कोई problem नहीं है. भाई दूसरे को मत मारो. Where are we taught this? I was never taught the harm principle in school. Nobody taught me that. I just got interested in philosophy through the accident of my parents being voracious readers. My father was very much into Bulle Shah or Shri Krishna, and he would be like, Nishkam karma samjho. Secondly, I am a disbeliever myself, but I believe religion has a lot of value to offer in terms of how ancient people thought. Right. And there are some pearls of wisdom there. Like, I personally live my life through the principles of Nishkam karma. What if you are a law student and if you don't know philosophy and if you don't understand morality and ethics, then I don't know what kind of a law student you're becoming. Because if you don't have a basic grounding, aapke agar grounding hi nahi hai, and if you're not even understanding why am I doing this, and if your only pursuit in life is material growth matters, but if you don't have an idea, if your first principles are not clear, so I would say every young kid, clear your first principles first. Understand how you're building an argument. And when you build an argument, you should anticipate what the opposition's reply would be. So you should understand what a steel man is. You should understand what a straw man is. You should understand different logical fallacies. Like what is a confirmation bias? What is a recency bias? I see no kid reading that. I just don't see kids studying that, reading that, trying to understand. See, if you don't do these things, it doesn't matter if you're a law student or any other student. If you ask me, I think every school after grade 8 should start teaching philosophy to young kids. They should actually
Absolutely.
get a basic primary in philosophy.
Mhm.
Philosophy is the biggest moral grounding that we can have, but it doesn't happen. So if you are someone who's not done it, I would recommend just start with basic philosophy books, like the
Okay.
history of philosophy, what basic philosophy is, or basic biases. Understand the top 100 biases. These are thinking toolkits that will clarify your, and how it helps you is like, I'm a businessman, right? I have my own business too.
Mhm.
When I read philosophy, when I read these biases, when I read these logical fallacies,
Mhm.
when I went to work, I realized where I was wrong in my own business decisions, and I could actually apply those principles and reduce costs in some places, increase efficiency in some places, convey my message better to my staff in a better way, where I think we are going wrong as a company. It makes you more accurate in your presentation of facts. And this is, I try to do that through my monologues once a week or once a month. I try to pick up some philosophical concept and I try to dumb it down and explain it to people. But my message to every young kid has to be only one: learn philosophy. Don't become a nut, but at least have basic grounding in these things. Like if you don't have basic grounding in these things, I think you'll struggle in most things in life, because what's coming at you in the age of artificial intelligence, and look, you have to decide, think about it, right? If you're a law student, 30 years down the line, you'll have softwares basic. देखो आज law, आप कोर्ट के बाहर जाते हो, आपको भी पता है कोर्ट के बाहर क्या होता है, 10,000 12,000 15,000 लेके, अच्छा ये कॉपी बना दो, ये लेटर बना दो, ये अर्जी डाल दो, a lot of lawyers at the lower financial level are actually doing that. We know in the next 30 years all these draftings and all these menial works
absolutely will be
are going to be done by machines. आप करोगे क्या?
True.
तो आप यंग बच्चे हो, आप अगर tier 3 सिटी में हो और आप सपना देख रहे हो कि I'm going to grow up and become a lawyer, it's a scary thought. And I'm not trying to scare anyone, but the point is, but if you have some extra skill set, and that, see, a lot of people are obsessed with degree ले लो, ये वाली degree कर लो, वो वाली degree कर लो. Degrees are very important, grades are very important. But the point is, until and unless your first principles are not clear, your head is not clear, you're not epistemically humble, you're not going to get openness in your brain. So especially law students, learn philosophy. I don't know if they're taught philosophy. I have no idea. I've not met a lawyer who understands philosophy.
At best, we are taught is jurisprudence, which is the philosophy of law, which is very restrictive to positivism and theories like that. I don't think we have the best. I think the best possibility of us learning, let's say, biases or any of these logical fallacies is when we debate. Debating societies in colleges have these kind of discussions at best. And I don't think any other such engagement allows us this kind of understanding. So asking you this question from a very action-oriented perspective, how do we, in like, for example, in bullets, if you can point out, how do we start developing this interest in philosophy? Are there certain books, areas that you would suggest we should start reading up, or these actions that we should start doing right now so that we can start developing this attribute?
Okay, first thing I would say is listen to short podcasts. So there is a beautiful philosophy podcast. It has both Indian and Western philosophy. I have some issues with the Indian philosophy. I think it's inaccurate in some areas, but that's okay. That's just me being nitpicky. There is a history of philosophy podcast by King's College London.
Okay.
Brilliant podcast. Just 25 minute के episodes हैं. इतनी अच्छी podcast है. I mean, बंदे ने, if you ask me, करोड़ों रुपए के वर्थ का प्रोडक्ट बना के रखा और ऐसे ही दे रहा है. ऐसे ही दे रहा है, फ्री में दे रहा है. It's a brilliant podcast. Second, I insist every kid reads Indian religious scriptures. At least read 14 principal Upanishads. Metaphysics, it's deep philosophy. Read it. It's 1,000 pages. 6 महीने में पढ़ लो यार, 1,000 पेज. It's 14 principal the principal Upanishads. You can use the translation by Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. You can do that. One thing, if you are interested, I would recommend is read a book which introduces us to all the Astika and Nastika darshanas in Indian philosophy. See, it is very important to understand what Indians thought like. So it is a book, it is an actual religious text called the Sarva Darshan Sangraha. Darshan means insight, philosophy.
Okay.
Your way, your epistemology, way of looking at the world. So that was written by Madhava Vidyaranya, and I would recommend everybody understands it. It has Charvak, it has Nyaya, it has Vaisheshik, it has Mimamsa, it has Bauddha Darshana, it has Jaina philosophy, it has all of them. Basically the 9 darshans. Like in ancient India, we had 6 Astic and 3 Nastic darshans. So people don't realize that Astic and Nastic was not theist and atheist. It was the ones who thought the Vedas were the authority and the ones who thought the Vedas are not the authority. So the Jain, Bauddha and Charvak were Nastic because they rejected the Vedas as an authority. But it was nothing to do with a belief in a god, because even Buddhism, Jainism and Charvak, all 3 don't believe in a god, but there is an Astic darshan that also does not believe in a god, which is Sankhya. Sankhya has no Ishwar. Sankhya in fact clearly says there is no Ishwar. Now what one realizes is that these ancient people were very different. Like we are so boxed in our brain to think from a Christian prism, because even our jurisprudence, if you look at it, like I'll give you a very good example here. Essential religious practices.
Yeah.
This is such a non-Hindu thing to talk about. This essential religious practice stems from a very Judeo-Christian understanding of how religion is. They are the people of the book. We don't have a book. We are a library.
Right.
Do you see that? They always had the book.
There is no prescribed preconditions in our religion, as in these are the standards. There's no such. There's no standards. Okay.
And our entire jurisprudence, you have to understand, because we have taken it over from the British, and the British built it on their Anglican principles. The entire jurisprudence, you will listen to the Supreme Court talking about this all the time. Essential religious practice, essential religious practice. Even in the Shabrimala case, it was all about essential religious practice. Show me the book. Where is it written in your book that it is your essential religious practice? Arey Baba, this tradition, the Vedas were oral. For thousands of years, the Vedas were just recited without being written down. So how do you ask a person who has an oral practice to have an essential religious practice? So that's where, kids should listen to lawyers like Jaisai Deepak. Wonderful arguments that are given by Jaisai Deepak, how he explains these things. You should watch his webinars. I mean, I'm talking, Sai Deepak is the guy who basically fought the Shabrimala case. He was the representative on the behalf of the Shabrimala devotees, right? Or the deity itself. So these things matter a lot. How different cultures and different religions come across. So if you're a law student, imagine how can you, a lot of kids in India who belong to, again, what I call the Hindu word in the legal sense, have imbibed a lot of Abrahamic values. Now, I'm not making a value judgment of whether Abrahamism is good or bad. That's for another day. But what I'm saying is that at least understand your culture on its own terms. So in philosophy, there is a thing called steel manning, right? Giving the argument of the other side as per the other side.
As per the other side, right.
Yeah. So if I was to have a debate with you, I would have to narrate to you, Kaustubh, what you believe in. And then when Kaustubh says, yes, Kushal, I believe in this, I have steel manned your argument. That means I understand it the way you do. How many young kids can steel man Hinduism being a Hindu? Or how many young kids can steel man Plato or Aristotle without... And these things matter. What I'm trying to say is develop some depth. Start with short podcasts.
Absolutely.
20 minutes, 25 minutes. There are multiple podcasts. And Western philosophy has so many good things to offer too. And if so, these 3, like the podcasts I mentioned, the books I mentioned, a couple of them, just read them. Take 1 year of your life and do this. And I can guarantee you will grow so much as an individual, grow so much as a professional, because you'll start using the principles of these books, these snippets that they give in your own professional practice. And you will calm down as a human being. You will not get phased when you are under the pump. And I believe you need that, because I don't know what artificial intelligence is going to do to us. I really don't know. So you have to be prepared, and you need to have those extra toolkits in your brain.
Absolutely. Wow, this conversation is as if someone has picked up a bat of reality and is smacking me on my face. It's blowing my mind. I have never thought like this before. And all of a sudden, I'm now exposed to all my vulnerabilities of my incompetence of not having any such deep understanding. Although I believed I was a debater, I had some understanding of logical reasoning and understanding of deduction, but absolutely no clue whatsoever. But this is interesting because this brings me to something that is very interesting that I've noted while I was researching for this episode, was the intro on your website about yourself, where if I may just project the gist, is that you're still searching for your identity in a way, that you're still trying to define yourself. And from that principle, if I may somehow derive that to my audience's interest. That is, in times like this, my audience is also somehow trying to define their interest, define their identity, seek who they are, and somehow eliminate that identity crisis. What is your opinion about that?
Well, it's a continuous process. I don't think I have figured myself out at the age of 39. I don't think so. You learn something new every day. The Kushal Mehra, who was a 29-year-old who had joined with India Against Corruption and who was fasting in Bombay with Anna Hazare fasting in Delhi, is a very different person from the Kushal Mehra today. We change every day. Look, I don't know how old you are, but like, you have to realize the scientific fact that for human beings, for Homo sapiens, our frontal lobe doesn't develop till the age of 25.
Yeah.
We actually are not even fully developed species till we are 25. So a lot of young kids are very emotional. The reasons for that are biological. And then over a period of time, they grow up, and it's not like I am something special. I also went through the same grind. I mean, I look at old Kushal and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking then? I mean, I look at myself and say, what were you doing then? So seeking is a continuous process. You will never stop seeking. In fact, you should be very scared the day you think I have had enough. Be very scared.
Yeah, exactly.
Seek daily. I mean, I always say this in a funny way. I don't know how many of your listeners must have seen that movie. Paresh Rawal tha na, har cheez mein question पूछता था Judai picture mein.
Yeah, that's a question mark on his face.
Yeah. So be like that Paresh Rawal, not annoying like him, but absolutely. In the good way. In a good way. Always try to learn something new. See, the advantage is, I'll tell you. So I felt I made the biggest mistake of my life, that I did not have a philosophy degree. I would read it. So I was like, abhi business karte hain, to ja to nahi sakta hu. College to nahi ja sakta is ayu mein. So I decided that there is only one place where I can actually get a degree and at least feel good about myself, not that it will help me anywhere. I decided to do a master's in philosophy. So unfortunately, because of this COVID, I should have finished my master's in philosophy in June this year. I had my exams, but China screwed it for me. So IGNU ke mere last day, I passed my first year. Second year ki maine sari meri assignments de di. I hope I'm going to pass. I think I will. So only thing left was my last exam, and I would have been a master's in philosophy. But at this age, at the age of 37, I decided to pursue a master's in philosophy. Now somebody was telling me to book likh le. I don't know. I'm confused whether I want to do a PhD or a master's in or write a book. But I do want to do one of it, or maybe my PhD might be about the book I want to write. But my whole point is that you never stop learning. So never think that you should look forward to learning every day. I mean, I learned so much from young kids here. I read a beautiful article on police reforms written by a 20-year-old boy. इतना सुंदर आर्टिकल लिखा था, इतना सुंदर आर्टिकल था. It was 2 or 3 series that boy had written. I forgot his name. I feel so bad, otherwise I would have given him props here. इतना अच्छा आर्टिकल मैंने बहुत दिनों के बाद पढ़ा. And I personally messaged him. I was like, क्या लिखे हो यार, मान गए. I wish I was like you at the age of 20. I was such a duffer. And you guys have such depth. And let me tell you, kids these days are far smarter than we were at the age of 20. I mean, the Flynn effect is real. The Flynn effect basically says that every generation, the IQ points of the new generation is higher than the previous generation. I totally agree with it. I see kids these days, and I was such a duffer when I was 20. And kids are so bright. So I think just learning is a constant process. And don't feel down about it. Just learn all the time. And that's where I think reading philosophy gives you that grounding, that mental grounding, where you can maybe rationalize the reality around you far better.
And I absolutely agree with whatever you've said. And the reason why I have asked you this question is perhaps because in today's age, as a law student, I also personally feel that there are a lot of affirmations that we have to make, especially when we try and find our niche in industries where we look for jobs. For example, we are supposed to know what we want to do in the next 5 years. We're supposed to know what area of law do we want to specialize in. We're supposed to know what person we are, and we're supposed to know that, okay, these are the areas that we can contribute in. So when we are supposed to make such heavy affirmations, we are supposed to make such statements in front of leaders who have perhaps gone through the experience, which is obviously much more vivid and vast in their own richness. How do we come to that conclusion and have that sort of clarity in our mind so that, okay, we can make tentative statements which we can perhaps stick by for a long term?
Oh, it's very tough. I think it's a lot of hit and run many times in life, but I mean, I don't know. In law right now, force majeure basically must be a huge thing right now, right?
Absolutely,
Because
yes.
of COVID. So somebody might say, "Oh, then I think I should focus on force majeure." But COVID is gonna go. Then what are you gonna do? 2 years, 3 years, force majeure may not be a big thing. And then again, you'll go back to the good old litigation because, like everything, COVID's gonna go, right? So it's very tough. But like I said, if you have an open mind, and I think what we don't encourage in India is cross-disciplinary reading and training. We have
Okay.
to become cross-disciplinarily trained. We need to have some skill sets in multiple fields, not necessarily in a degree form, because I think the degree and its value is going to die in the next 20 years, in my view. I think what people value now more, companies hiring value now more, is how can you make them money? How can you bring in different skill sets, different toolkits, and make those companies money? Like I recently had a podcast with an entrepreneur who's just started this thing called X Billion Labs. His name is Samyak Chakrabarti.
Yes.
You should check it out. So Samyak also talks about how to train people.
Wonderful episode.
Become so prepared for us. I think that is there. So these kinds of things are there. I think the value of the degree is going to, I mean, आप just imagine करो ना, अगर सब बच्चों को 99 मार्क्स मिल रहे तो चेकिंग क्या हो रही है? सीधी बात है, ऐसे तो हो नहीं सकता ना कि इतने सारे तो नहीं हो गए ना सारे. It can't be that way. If every child is getting 99 out of 100, there is something wrong in the system. So we have basically diluted the value of our grades. Although at our time grades used to value a lot. I'm not saying grades don't matter, but become, aware of 2, 3, 4 toolkits. Like every single young kid you're growing up today understands social media.
Yeah.
If you understand, because imagine if you're a lawyer these days and you can have your own YouTube channel and you can talk about legal concepts and you can train people. You can show your views from a legal perspective. Imagine if you're a lawyer 10 years ago, आपके पास तो ये option ही नहीं थी. You could not have an audience. Just think how vast. And you don't have to talk. You could be a lawyer with a YouTube channel on constitution law. You could be a lawyer on corporate law and have your YouTube channel. There are so many niches in law itself. So the point is, but just knowing law is not enough. Then you have to know tech. You have to know how to make thumbnails. You have to know the rigmarole of that. Or maybe you can start talking about the philosophy of law itself. Like maybe you're a lawyer and you want to understand how ancient people did law. So you read the Dharma Shastras, right? 6,000 pages, read it all up and say, okay, this is how ancient people thought, this is how modernity is, and I create this contrast between modern, like Hammurabi's code, right? Hammurabi's code was so different from how law is currently, but how many people actually talk about it? So there are so many things you can use. Also, so many judgments in India use American and British judgments as an example. Now, why isn't anybody who's getting up in India telling, hang on, those are different people, their cultures are different, their realities are different. How can you just take their judgments and apply it on us? Have you done the cross-cultural transfer over? Have you tested it? So there are many things. So become interdisciplinary. Learn a few other disciplines. When you learn other disciplines, your mind opens up and you have so many more possibilities. So I think you should see, I am an eternal optimist. I believe the world is getting better and better and better. Even if AI comes, what AI will destroy is menial jobs, right? But what AI will create the space for is heavy duty creativity. So you can be so creative in your spare time that we might get a lot more painters, a lot more artists, a lot more philosophers. I can imagine the ancient Athens coming back actually, where you'll have the town square where we'll be seeing philosophers debate each other again, because people will have spare time. Because philosophy villoं ka kaam hai basically. So, when society will have villas, we will have philosophy. So it's like that. I see many things, but you have to change with time. If you're going to not change with time, then you're going to be stuck.
Right. I think I am sort of speechless in a way, because to be very honest, none of this has ever crossed my mind. None of this I have ever thought of, although I'm very much interested in these deep thinkings and I love reading. But as a student, I think we are we are distracted all the time, either by social media, we are distracted by academic pressure, we are distracted by a need to somehow carve our niche in every legal field. Although through this platform, through this podcast, I've had conversations with some really established leaders in legal field as well, and all of them suggest that you get to know yourself once you enter the legal field, and eventually you try and figure out. So there is no point somehow trying pushing yourself, but obviously a certain amount of work ethic needs to be put, readings need to be done, work needs to be put. And as whatever you suggested about intermingling the philosophy with our legal education, in reading, cross cultural, cross disciplinary reading is going to give us the kind of personality, the mindset that is actually going to help us. Absolutely wonderful. This is the kind of conversation that was missing from the One Take show, that was indispensably required. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing remarks for our listeners?
Oh, no, I just wish all of them the very best in life. I hope they work hard and don't get disheartened. I mean, I am a sincere believer in the progress of humanity. I believe we are far better than human beings 500 years ago, 1000 years ago, 1500 years ago. And I can tell you 100 years down the line, the human beings after us are going to be far better than us. So I think there is nothing to look down upon. Humanity is wonderful. The world is great. I'm happy under COVID also. We will get over COVID also. I mean, just think about it. Jab influenza aaya tha 1918, में, just think about it. We were so shit scared. We did not know what's going to happen. But look at COVID. Just compare the influenza deaths and the COVID deaths per capita, right? Look at the billions of people on the planet Earth and how many people have died. That shows humanity has become so better technologically. So there's nothing to feel down upon. If you're a young kid, you're in a far better time today than you were in the past.
Absolutely.
So enjoy it, and that's all I have to say.
Wonderful. This is exactly what I wanted to convey to all my listeners. Hence, the principle of the One Take show is somehow solved. Thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule, sitting down with me for this conversation. I had a wonderful time. I hope you had a good time too.
Pleasure is mine.
Thank you so much, sir.